hello, 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 hello. Welcome to another episode of The Rose Show. It is that time. As always, it is your host, Jay, who else but me. And today, I've got two of my good friends with me, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. Before we started today's show, I just wanted to address something real fast that happened last week. In the Midwest, ironically enough, which is the topic of this episode today. In the Midwest, there was a storm system that came through here last week that spawned, as of this recording, they've confirmed at least 8 different tornadoes. A lot of the damage was actually in the area that I'm in this vicinity, probably in about an hour to 2 hour drive vicinity of where I live. And actually one of the tornadoes actually crossed right above here, this house. There was a confirmed F2 tornado, was on the edge of the city of Piqua where I live. It picked up, literally jumped over the city and landed back down on the edge and kept going. And I've seen some of the pictures and some of the devastation that these storm systems left behind. Now, the pictures you're looking at right now isn't one specific place. There are multiple different places. I think a couple are in Greenville, a couple are in Logan County. Logan County, Ohio is actually where it got the worst out of the two. And knowing that damage was caused by the same thing that flew over this very roof is humbling, terrifying, and I'm not gonna lie, tornadoes do scare the shit out of me. When I was little, I think I was like 5 or 6. One of my earliest memories is my mom rushing me and my 2 sisters down to the basement because a tornado warning was in effect. The sirens that were going everywhere, and when you're that little, you don't fucking know what's going on, right? But she was taking us all downstairs, left us there so she could watch the news, which, we were safe. It's not like, she just threw us down there. That's not what I'm trying to imply at all. But we were down in a windowless area of the house. And I just remember all of us being so scared. And that memory has kind of fucked with me ever since. And I've always been real timid of tornadoes. But we've never really had one get this close before. As far as where we live now here in Piqua, I don't think since I've been an adult. There's been a couple to hit Troy the last couple of years, which is strange because that's never been a thing. We've always had activity in this area, but there's not a whole lot that has dropped. I mean, if you don't know Troy, I guess I should say Troy is just south of Piqua. Troy is actually where I grew up. So we're like right next to each other, right? So there's not ever really been this much tornado activity until recently. It seems like Tornado Alley is kind of moving our way, and seeing some of the devastation, some of the lives that were affected. I mean, this wasn't. They said it on the news as it was happening. As this tornado was going above this house. There were mass casualty incidences all throughout the state, and man, it's looking at some of the footage of this tornado, it's crazy. It was absolutely crazy. So I just wanted to extend my condolences to everybody that was affected by this system. Again, it could have been us. I could not have the room that I'm sitting in right now, or the house that's right next to me attached to this room. And there are a lot of people don't right now. So I wanted to extend my condolences, my positive energy, all my prayers, everything I've got. I'm going to be looking to donate financially to some organization when I find one that's trying to help these people. If you know of any, please hit me up, whether in the comments of this show or get a hold of me directly. You can email the rowshowpod@gmail.com. I would be more than happy if I can to financially help out with some of the stuff going on. Just I'm so sorry that people out there are dealing with this. And again, it could have been us. This whole town that I live in of 21,000 people was literally in line to be next. They were saying on the news, if you are in Piqua, you need to be in your safe space. There is a strong tornado coming right toward you. And, me and my wife and my dog were in a stairwell closet, just literally praying, that we just made it through. And I think what was going through my head was, I don't care about the personal possessions. Just don't let, no physical harm. That was the only thing I was worried about. And the fact that We got neither. No damage, obviously no physical harm to anybody in this town. It's a little a miracle, anything I just said is not an exaggeration. That's what happened. It literally, the tornado picked up and got out of Pickwood and dropped again. And again, it was a confirmed F2 at this point. I think it was probably closer to an F3 just looking at some of the footage, but that's my amateur opinion. But either F2 or F3, either way it goes, it's if it hits you, you're done, so but anyway, I just wanted to say that, get that off my chest, because I do kind of use this as my therapy now. But let's have some fun shit, shall we? I got my two homies with me, Fatz King and Jay Bizarre. We're going to be talking all about Midwest Underground, what it means to us. And also, at the end of this, I'm going to be talking about a gathering of the Juggalos story that I have never told until this episode, because it's one of the most possibly could have been one of the most embarrassing things I've ever done. But luckily, I was with people that made sure I didn't do anything fucking dumb. But anyway, a word from our sponsor, and then let's get to it. All right, everybody, it's time to stop and let you know about today's sponsor of the show, Crazy Martin's in Pickwa, Ohio, one of my favorite places in the entire world to go to. Crazy Martin's has provided their customers with quality products for over 20 years, from ashtrays to water pipes and everything in between. Stop in, check out their selection, and of course, check out their pinball machines. With over 20 pins to choose from, there is something for everyone. Crazy since 1996. I don't just say this about every place. I love going to Crazy Martin's. I've always loved going to Crazy Martin's ever since I was of age to go to Crazy Martin's. It's one of my favorite places in the entire world. Me and my wife go there almost every Sunday to play pinball machines. It is one of the funnest spots in Ohio you could possibly find. It is in Pickwa, Ohio. Check out their website at www.crazymartins.com. What is happening, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of The Rose Show. As always, I am the host with the motherfucking most, Jay, who else but me, and today I wanted to do something a little bit different. So, from my perspective, and we won't go into the deeps of it until we get going, but from my perspective, the Midwest is overlooked quite a bit when it comes to its importance in underground music, not just underground rock, not just underground rap, underground music, period. And like I said, we're going to go into that. But first, let me go ahead and introduce my guests for the day. Two people I've known for quite some time, and honestly, two individuals that I feel have been in the underground longer than 99.9% of the people that have watched this, and have just as much experience as anyone else. And when it comes to, a lot of people talk about when you do exposés, you want to get the quote unquote experts. Let me tell you something. The experts of the underground are the people behind the stage, the people on the stage that are there at every single show, not just the shows for themselves. And those are my two guests for the day. Jay Bizarre has been a Columbus mainstay for as long as I can remember. And Fatz Kings has been in every pit that I've seen in the entire Midwest. If I'm there, he's there. My brothers, how are we doing this evening? Jay, how you doing, buddy?
What up, y'all? Man, it's great to see y'all. It's great to be on here with you, man. You've been doing great with the episodes already.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. My brother Fatz, how you doing, homie?
Oh, I'm good, bro. High as the sky as usual. I appreciate the warnings that people have been given, but nobody's listening. Yes. Everybody still wants to mosh with me, no matter how many times they're told they shouldn't.
That's true. I did it one time, and after that, I was like, "Yeah, I got the experience, and I'm good." But all right, let's go ahead and get rolling. Like I said in the intro, the underground is a staple. It is the heartbeat in the Midwest of the entire scene. I don't care what anyone says; it's just the truth. When you really take a look at the actual overall history of the underground, they go off and they go do something on the West Coast or the far East Coast. And then what happens the very next year? They're right back here. There's a reason for that. And it doesn't matter who it is, whether it be, like I said, rock. Kiss is a mainstay in the Midwest. That's how they got their start, was in Detroit. Same thing with Alice Cooper. Gimmicks in the Midwest just work. It's how it is. That's why professional wrestling is so hot in the Midwest before anywhere else. It's just the way it is. But before we get rolling, Fatz, I'm going to go ahead and start with you, my man. How did you get introduced into underground music in general?
Man, I stole a copy of my brother's Ringmaster, or not Ringmaster, but Riddlebox sampler tape, and I heard that, and I was already like, man, this is fucking crazy. And I already was a comic book fan. I was already a sci-fi nerd. I already liked horror movies at this juncture in my life, like 13, 14, just cutting my teeth. And after I heard the Riddlebox and I'd been introduced to what, ICP was, Great Malenko dropped. And at that point, at that time, if you hadn't seen the shockumentary, if you hadn't been clued into what ICP was, then you were kind of left behind. Because, like, one of the funny things is Juggalos, we come and go as far as popularity in the mainstream. It's a cycle. Every 5 or 6 years we pop back up, but that's neither here nor there. We can come back to that. But yeah, I was like 13 or 14. I heard Malenko. I loved what the fuck I heard, because, like I was saying, I'm into comics, I'm into horror movies, I'm into nerd shit. Why wouldn't I want my music to sound as such? And as being an outcast, this was the closest place to home I'd ever felt.
Yeah, sure. Bizarre, let's go ahead and go with you, my man. You've been in the underground in Columbus for God knows how long. How did you first get into underground?
Well, actually, I got my start in Austin, Texas. I lived in Austin, Texas. I actually moved to Columbus. It was super late in 2011. I think 2012. I think it was around Christmas. I think I remember being on the phone with, I don't know if y'all know my homegirl, Kayla K. She used to put a lot of shows on in Columbus. And I remember being during Christmas time at my sister's house, getting my first lead on a show up in Columbus. And then since that, because as soon as I got here, I was walking around the convenience stores and little spots, record stores, and putting flyers in, just trying to get my music going here. But it was the same thing down in Texas too. Like Juggalo, that's obviously came up a Juggalo, you know what I mean? So I got love for that style. You know what I mean? I try to switch it up too, but yeah.
It's where we all come from. You know what I mean? You got to kind of own it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense.
My first album, I actually was living in Dublin, which is just right outside of Columbus, in it was 98. And my friend in the complex of the apartments I was staying at had a Great Malenko tape. And I remember hearing it, but I was into like Tupac and shit a lot at that time. And then I heard that, I was like, this shit's crazy. You know what I mean? All the cussing in it and shit, you know what I mean? Teenager hearing that shit. And then I ended up moving back down to Texas, flying down there. And my brother just happened to have a friend who had the tape too. And so I was like, yeah, I heard of this, and like from there, it was buying cassette tapes I went back and bought Riddlebox. And I remember I actually had gotten a Carnival Carnage tape. Luckily, I traded No Limit Records, I think it was Cain and Abel album, for a fucking original Carnival Carnage tape, and just started collecting all the cassettes. And then my first album that came out, I didn't even know was coming out because we didn't have the internet and shit. And it was we walked into a record store, and it was the guy at the counter was like, that new Jekyll Insane Clown Posse ICP Jekyll Brothers is out. I'm like, a new one? And that's the first CD I got of ICP. So like that's old school, and that was probably 98.
Yep, me too. That was
probably 99, but yeah.
I got into it at the tail end of Malenko. So that was the era when they were in the WWF, and that was my first visual exposure to them. And I started to check them out after that. And then the very first disc that dropped was Jekyll Brothers. Now, to be clear, Jekyll Brothers is not my favorite. However, it does have the most sentimental for me because, like you said, Jay, that was my first, that stamp. And there's a poster right here on my wall of both. And I'll take a picture and I'll put the picture up here when this part of the show comes up. You've got the old school where they got the hands and the burnt up look and everything. Sure. That's still on my wall to this day for like that. My favorite, yep, that was the one. Yep.
Do you know what else I think, though, is there was a ritual to this. Most of us grew up in smaller towns that were closer to bigger towns that had the record stores, right? So if you wanted to go and cop that new shit, you had to go a town or two over. You had to go with your boys on your bike or in a car if somebody was cool enough to drive. And then you had to go into the Media Play or the Suncoast or the fucking whatever it was called in your area. Mine was called On Cue. It was a subsidiary of Media Play, and that was my plug, for a lack of better terms. That's where I went. So when you went and you copped that new hotness, that new Jekyll Brothers, that new Lotus, that new Bazaar, all about that around that time, you were going to these places. And I feel like it was more than just, it's more than just buying a CD. I mean, not to be all like that, but it felt like a pilgrimage sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Bazaar, you probably had a little bit more access to it, didn't you? Because you being so close to Columbus and Dallas and stuff like that, it was probably easier for you to find the media. Would that be accurate?
I was in when he was saying about your experience as a young Juggalo. Yes, it was like that, and it's funny because it was towns over. I went to high school in Lockhart, Texas, and we used to go to this place that was over in San Marcos, Texas, called, I believe it was Sundance. And that was my spot. I'd get my Tupac bootlegs. I get ICP shit. They had the comics. That's where I started collecting the comics. That was my spot. And like you said, you had to drive to get there. So it was like part of the experience. And then like when Freak Show and Bazaar came out, like I remember that's where I went and got them at the same time. Like, so that's fucking, I haven't even thought about that shit the whole time. Whoop, whoop. Whoop, whoop. I know you don't move.
Like a motherfucker.
For me, it was... For me, it was, I grew up in Troy, Ohio. Now, today, Troy is a hell of a lot bigger than what it is now. It was a point where it was a big deal when the town got Meyer, back in the mid-90s, right? But, and I'm going to date it even further. So, there were 2 stores before Meyer came along that had any kind of media. One was Walmart, and up until, what was it, this year? Walmart didn't put out parental advisory sticker CDs. I think this is the first year with the vinyl where they actually did it. And this is 2024. You know what I'm saying? So you would either go to Walmart, which obviously what we listen to, Walmart ain't a thing. We're not getting it there. Or the other store in Troy was called CD Connection. Now, CD Connection no longer exists for obvious reasons, but CD Connection only got like 3 or 4 copies of a release because it was a small town, right? We weren't getting that many. So if I went to the store, whether it be CD Connection or Walmart or whatever, and it wasn't there, I'm not getting it for at least another month. So that was my pilgrimage. I had to be the first one there, or I'm not getting it. That was my struggle there. And again, eventually Meyer came along, but Meyer wasn't picking up. Here's the thing that a lot of people these days forget. Not only was it incredibly taboo to begin with, the cussing music. Incredibly taboo. Now, everyone does it. It's not a big deal at all. You could say fuck after midnight on Comedy Central on cable television now. You don't truly understand just how taboo it was to cuss in music. So Meyer, it took them a while to come around to underground music and stuff like that. But if it wasn't a CD Connection, I wasn't getting it. And it just shows just how much times have changed from when... and I think that's why a lot of us who were old OGs in the scene appreciate what it used to be as much, because as you said, you rite of passage. You weren't just you weren't just picking this up and Googling your song. You had to go find it. You had to go get it. And it made us appreciate it that much more, I think.
You know what's kind of cool on that type of thing? To this day, right? Every year, Twisted puts out a record store day record, and it's still that. It's still, I usually go to Magnolia Thunder Pussy down on High Street in Columbus, and I still luckily have a spot I go to for shit like that. And usually I get one. This last year, last year I didn't get one. I was like, fuck. But I was collecting them. Right. But I still have that, you know what I mean? It's still there a little, at least with that. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I mean, not to get into Uncle Corner or anything, but like this is what physical media dying is going to be. This is how it's going to progress. But that's a whole other fucking subject. You said you wanted to ask why we think that the Midwest is a staple, and I can give you the number one reason: performances. They happen here. You said it with Kiss. They're from New York, but they did their biggest shows at fucking Cobo Hall in Detroit. Yeah. Most of the Midwest area that includes Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, parts of Tennessee, depending on, and a little further over. That's not as far of a drive as you might think. Specifically on the Indiana, Ohio side, like Right now, if I got in my car, I could be in Metro Detroit in 5 hours.
Yeah.
If there's a show happening and I left at 10, I can be at the hotel by fucking, you know what I mean, 1, 2 o'clock, and then I'm relaxing until I go and get in line. If you live in California, if you live in Florida and you want to come to these events, that's a plane ride. That's a long drive. And I think that's something we in the Midwest, we don't realize how spoiled we really are.
Yeah, that's absolutely accurate. And yeah, if you go back and actually look at the history, of whether or not anybody wants to admit it, whatever you feel about them now, it's kind of irrelevant. This is still the truth. If it wasn't for Insane Clown Posse, there wouldn't have been an underground scene. I'm sorry. It just wouldn't. But if you go back and look at the mapping system that they used, it went from where they were in Detroit and they intentionally targeted Toledo and Cleveland and all the upper Ohio spots. And then it just trickled down from there. You've got I-75 that goes all the way up to the top of the country, all the way down to the bottom. So I-75 all along down that area up until really you hit Tennessee. That's the hotbed because it's the closest for them. And not only that, we don't really have a whole lot of shit to do other than going to events, whether it be at a stadium, at a club, at a concert venue, whatever it might be.
Yep.
Now, I wanted to kind of get into this for you, Bizarre, before we get too much into this, because you and me, I started getting back into music right around the time when I first met you. Like you said, 2011, 2012. How did you get in to start doing shows and creating your own music? Because I think that a lot of people don't really respect the hustle that you have put in over the years in this area in general. And not only just you, I think you represent a portion of the population that have continued to support this scene from the performer aspect of the quote unquote opener. I hate that term. I don't like using the word opener, but you know, the people that carry the show, the lifeblood of the show. How did you get into doing that?
Well, like I said, in Austin, Texas, I remember just, I don't know. All right. So quick brief. It all starts obviously trying to record it on like a little fucking speaker and a mic type situation. And then like from there, it's freestyling with people and having a vibe, you know what I mean? And liking to be with music and shit. And at some point, I remember wanting to do something for real. And then it was probably a couple years or a few years later, and I still wanted to. And then so at one point, I believe it was 2004, I ordered a Dell computer system, and it came in all these boxes and shit. And I was so happy because I could finally, so I lived in a house and I had a roommate who was in a band, and he was a rapper too, but in a band. And so he told me what I needed, and I seen his setup, and so basically I was able to get into it like that. So that was like 2004, and then as far as getting on live shows, it took 2 years for me to get to where I was comfortable to be like, okay, I want to try to get a show. I mean, I remember wanting to get shows, but I just never had occasions to actually make it happen. Well, in 2006, I had gotten I believe it was a show at a place called Red Rums in Austin, Texas. And it was like just a venue that finally opened the doors for me to be able to do a show. It was our show. We were the only ones performing. The second show we did was at a coffee shop, like literally a fucking coffee shop with a corner that they had a mic and 2 mics. And it was like, and I remember having to burn discs, you know what I mean? And take it up there and play it on like a CD player. And I had bought this double disc player just to play again was our own show. So I didn't get on shows yet. And then I didn't get on to shows probably till 2017 when I started doing solo stuff outside of my group I had started with, which was my motivation at first, other than always wanting to do it, you know what I mean? But so it was just like, that's how I got in the door of doing actual shows.
How did you establish yourself in Columbus? Because like I said, when I met you, we had crossed paths at a mass murder media event in Piqua, Ohio. So by that time you had already kind of set your foundation down. Were you a child of the MySpace days, perhaps?
Yeah. Yeah.
We treated Tom poorly.
But so I moved up here. my objective moving up here was I had made flyers at like a Kinko's or wherever the fuck, and I took them to little gas stations. I'd hang them on poles, but I felt like they just fall off. And I'd just get cheap paper flyers. And I'd hand them out. I cut them out like I got a cutter still to this day. I still cut little flyers. You know what I mean? Like for little shit. You know what I mean? And I would go around putting them around, and then I went to some shows and I met promoters and was like, "Hey, I'm new in the area." That was my line right there. I'm like, "Hey, I'm new in the area from Austin, Texas, and I'm a hip hop artist. You mind if I leave flyers, or you guys got any shows? You need any openers? You know what I mean?" So I just went straight for the fucking hog, you know. And then met promoters. I did some shows like up in Cleveland, and did some shows with Mass Murder Media. Linked up with them, and when I met you, speaking of that venue, was so fucking dope. Right on the river, had the glass window where you could eat and shit. That shit was dope.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a Mexican restaurant now. Unfortunately, they don't really do what they used to do. But the reason being was because this place, it was called what was it called? I don't remember. Oh, it was called Heck Yeah. That was the name of this spot.
Yeah.
And it was on the riverbank. So you had like a restaurant area up top, and then it split down into a bar, and there was like an area down here that was a bar with a patio outside where they would have shows sometimes when it was hot out and everything. But again, it was on a riverbank in the Great Miami River. It flooded yearly, at least. So it wasn't sustainable, but man, for the years we were able to use it, you're right. That was one of my favorite spots. And you were technically in county property, which was zoned out for noise. You could be as loud as you want for as long as you wanted. It was fucking great. But okay,
see, that's something. Sorry, that's something that I feel like people don't talk about enough. Is there's not enough cool fucking venues anymore. Like there are places that we're allowed to go that are okay, but like, fuck, when I was coming up, the place I went to was called Bogart's. I'm not going to say that the scene itself has made it this way, but there are a lot of people who are too busy trying to be the bigger asshole in order to understand that they've kind of fucked it for everyone.
Yeah, it's usually how it works with like everything. Always one asshole fucks it up for all of us.
Yeah. But okay, so you alluded to when you were coming up, Bogart's was your spot of choice. How did you start going to shows, and go ahead and walk through that? Because I think that, and I could be wrong with you, but I think that at some point, every person who is, and this is going to sound weird, I don't mean it the way it's going to sound initially, everyone who's made their personality about going to live events, there's this light moment that goes off in their head, and it's like, this is what I love. And it becomes their personality just as much as anything becomes anyone's personality, whether you're a writer, whether you do graphic design, whatever. At some point, there's something that clicks and goes, this is who I am. Did you have a moment like that going to concerts when you're first coming up, or is this something
kind of yeah? So with growing up in a small town as a Juggalo, there weren't many of us. The few that there were, we had to kind of learn things on our own and find out things. And like the first ICP show I ever got to go to, even though I've been doing this shit forever, the first ICP I got to go to with the fucking 6 Jokers card. It was ABK, it was fucking ICP, and oh god, who was the other opener? It was ABK, somebody else in ICP. I can't remember who the other opener was, but it was a 6 Jokers card tour, and I remember just the first and foremost was the mosh pit. That was being in there, being surrounded by people, because I'd been to metal shows and I'd gone to places where it felt like this is maybe a fight, but we're not going to admit it. People swinging, throwing elbows, blood and shit like that. I didn't ever feel that at an ICP show, and it was one of those things where, like, the only word I can describe is home. I felt home in this moment, in this time, and it was an addiction from then on. If there was a show at Bogart's, I didn't miss it. If there was gas money involved and I could get as far as fucking Pennsylvania, Detroit, whatever, I'll sleep on somebody's fucking couch. I don't care. There was a point in my life where I was literally holding down a job just to get tickets. Let's be real.
Classic, man.
Absolutely.
Classic Juggalo shit, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
the second gathering I ever went to, you mentioned MySpace. I linked up with 3 cats from California on their way out here. They stopped by where I was living, picked me up, and then we went to the gathering. I talked to these people online for 3 or 4 months, but I've never met these fucking people in my life. And I jumped in a car with them and went to fucking Cave in Rock, Ohio, or Illinois. Oh my God, Cave in Rock. I don't want to wax Juggalo nostalgic, but that place was a paradise that if you've never been, then you can't imagine what it was like.
Yeah, I never got to fucking go there, man. I lived down in Texas, never went there. But when I moved up here, I went to all the ones up here in Ohio.
Talk about people fucking it up for everybody, right? Cave and Rock. That's the only thing I think of. Talk about people fucking it up for everyone.
Not paying bills.
Yeah.
Not paying bills.
The underground's been kind of good to you as well. Recently at a show of all places, you asked your future bride to marry you. Did you meet her at a show?
You know what? Actually, you want to hear some real shit? Our first date was Attacking Ninjas 2018 in Kokomo, Ohio. This is going to go a little deep into my past, but it doesn't matter. I was talking to a female, but she curbed me. So when she curbed me, I had a hotel purchased and 2 fucking tickets. So technically, I was sitting kind of big pimping. So I'd been talking back and forth with Casey for a few months, but when we started to make it official, I asked her, I was like, so I got free tickets, a whole lot of weed, and a hotel. You ain't got to pay for shit. How about it? And, fat guy swag, it is what it is. But yeah, at Camp Zool 1 in the freezing, frigid fucking Ohio fucking woods, I got down on my knees and cried like a fucking baby as I asked the love of my life to marry me. It was it was a moment. Camp Zool itself Camp Zool 1 itself was a moment in and of itself, but that one just kind of spun it the rest of the way around.
It was Camp Zool 1. This is how I view it, and I've said this already on previous shows, but it is what it is. It's my show. I can repeat myself as much as I want. So we've got Camp Zool 1, day 1. One of the best experiences of my life because I just got to kind of take everything in, and it was my first time working. For me, I looked at it as this was one of the biggest challenges I was ever going to have in my life running this show because I was front of house for the first time. I was responsible for making sure everything was going the way it was supposed to be doing, right?
You deserve a fucking
Day
award.
2 was equally as fun, but it was one of the coldest, absolute fucking coldest days of my entire life. Literally, that was the first snow of the year was day 2. And people had camped that year in the middle of November because everybody was like, oh yeah, the weather shouldn't be that bad. Yeah, we were fucking wrong. Hence why
it wasn't a week before. A week before it was in the fucking 70s. Oh, yeah, I can't scream that enough. It's Ohio weather, exactly. Now I had set up a tent and I was gonna camp, and motherfuckers grabbed a hold of me and threw me in a van and drove me to a hotel. Said you're not sleeping out there.
Yeah, Jay, you need to get on one of those, bro. I think you would do really well out there, bro. You need to try your best to try to get on one.
I don't know how to do that, man, but
I could definitely see you out there.
It looks like a good time for real.
It's you know what, man? It's everything the gathering used to be.
Yeah, that's what's up.
That's Sorry and shit.
My homeboys with the Rejects, we got Shit Fest, and that shit reminded me of like just being at the gathering, man. And there's nothing like that.
But that's the best part about where the scene's gone. Most of us, we know where the blueprint was, but I love seeing where it's gone. I love that when you go into a city, for the most part, there's 4 or 5, maybe 6 bands that run that particular area. They're going to be the ones that are putting on the most shows. They're going to be the ones that are promoting like a motherfucker. They're going to be the ones that are bringing the bigger national acts, bringing the other national acts as well. And in the beginning, all there was ICP touring. And because of those tours and them stopping in these places and scenes coming up because of that, it's literally the same thing that happened with hip hop in the 80s and punk rock in the 70s and the 80s. We grow the scene. There are acts that started, but we're the ones who decide how and where it goes. And unfortunately, it doesn't make it as uniformly across the country as where it could be. But in the mainstays and the strongholds, you see the unity. You see people just trying to enjoy these shows and people just trying to perform and do things they love.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a beautiful
I'm
thing.
with you on that.
It really is out here. Like there's
Yeah.
a lot of
And
talent every city. Like I know people from just Dayton. I know fucking Tritone like out there. Shout out Tritone. Like in Toledo, the OIC homeboys. Like you know what I mean. In Cincinnati, I got the Rejects out there. Like and it's dope. You know what I mean. You work with as an artist. You know you work with these different people and different crews. It's dope to be able to go outside the city, you know what I mean? And then Columbus, I'm always trying to do something in Columbus, you know what I mean? Not too often, don't like to oversaturate. I'm not one of those guys that is booking shows all the time where I bring in the acts because I honestly don't want that. I like to focus more on the artist part, you know what I mean? The music, and that's why I can pump out a lot of music because I don't get caught up in too much other business other than my work life and my family life, you know what I mean? So I feel like that's why I can keep the longevity of keep going and keeping things constantly coming because one, I got the motivation to do it. Two, I love the scene and it feels good to get out here with people in different cities, different crews I don't see all the time link back up. It's
to your point, and this kind of circles back to the entire point of the show that we're doing here today. Where else do you see that happening? Nowhere. It can only happen in the Midwest. You look at it's past by the time this episode is going to be released, but they're having Juggalo Day in Texas this year. Yeah. So Clockwork E and Super Famous Fun Time guys go, fuck it, we're going to do our own here in Ohio. Juggalo Ohio, Chapter 17. Where are they doing it? Here in Ohio. Why are they doing it? Like you, like you said,
The Gathering.
Camp Zool, here in Ohio. The Gathering will leave, go somewhere else, try to do one somewhere else. The next year, they're right back in Legend Valley. Why? Because you can't do it.
Everybody knows what happened in Oklahoma.
I'm like 15 minutes from Legend Valley too, so I'm like really in the Mecca, you know?
Yeah. That's my point, and that's the reason why I wanted to do this show today. The importance of the tri-state, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, the importance of those three, and there's others obviously, but those three in particular, you take those out of the underground, there is no underground.
There is no underground.
I hate to say it.
It's just not going to happen. There is a West Coast scene. There is an East Coast scene.
There's a Texas scene too.
But they're spot shows, and they're very sporadic. And anyone I know that are out there, they all say the same thing. Man, I wish we could get shows out here.
Yeah.
You're the only ones who can make that happen.
Yeah, when I lived down there, I'd get on shows, but they were far and few.
Few and far in between, exactly.
I made my own shows. I had to make my own, or groups I worked with, we'd put shows together, and you know what I mean? Like, that's how we had to do down there. So, yeah, you're right. I guess it is kind of spot shows. Austin will have them, like, this is the fucking Juggalo Day. That's kind of like a spot show, obviously. So it's like, in San Antonio, like we were thinking about going down there. I know so many people down there, but then we were like, we got this and this coming up, and then we had to rule it out. We would have to buy flights.
J-Day itself makes sense that it travels. Yeah, I understand that. That makes sense for that show. It makes it to where they can go to other places. But the mainstays, Hollow Wicked, The Gathering, New Year's Evil, Camp Zool, Super Show, fucking Axmas, all of these big every year shows, it's about a strip straight down, and it either comes out this way or it comes out a little that way, and it's always going to be in one of these places. And I hear people complain about it, and they're like, well, why can't we get it out here? New Year's Evil was in Pennsylvania 3 years ago and no one showed up.
Yep. And here's the thing, and people can say this is our opinion. That's fine. You can say that all you want to. However, I have credentials. They're on this wall right here. They're on that wall right there. So I've got some actual background and some proof over what I'm about to say right here, right now. I've been on 2 national tours. One as an artist with Menace to Sobriety. Again, credential right there. And another one working for Twisted. Again, credential right there. So I've got all the proof that I need right here, okay? I have seen what these shows produce. Los Angeles, doesn't happen. Texas was always good. Houston was always a good spot when we went through there. Both times we went through Houston. Houston was good. So I can back up what you're saying right there, Jay Bazaar. Texas does have a good scene.
It's
Everywhere
like
else was
in Houston and Austin and sometimes San Antonio. Other
right.
than that, it'll
So
be random shit.
what the reason why I was able to break in to the underground scene as heavy as I did to where I can show the credentials on my wall was because I decided that Dayton needed a scene and I created one that is still going to this day. I did. Now, I'm not saying that no brag, as Eric Bischoff like to say, no brag, just fact. I created the Dayton scene. The man who made Dayton scene is staring at you right now. Now, I'm not saying that to brag, like I said. I'm saying that because the only reason I was able to do that was because the shows were successful. Why? Midwest Heartbeat. That's why. Not because of me.
Because we show
Not
the fuck
because
out.
of me. Because people came to these events. They sold by 6 months. My very first show was in April. By October of that year, I think it was 2016, 2017, something like that. By October of that year, we are selling out with Twisted. That does not happen in Oklahoma. Again, I'm not trying to pat myself on the shoulder. I was able to accomplish that because there were people there willing to support it. That's why the Midwest is the underground heartbeat. Anybody, you could have a heartbeat in fucking Portland if you wanted to. You got to come out to the shows. I'd see that shit in comment sections all the time where people will be like, "Oh, why aren't you coming out to my city?" Because your city ain't buying tickets.
Well, and I'll give you another one too. It also helps if there's an anchor band. Like, for example, at one point there was a Cali scene because it was run by Subnoise. But since there is no Subnoise anymore, there isn't a Cali scene. Like, okay, LSP, they fucking control Colorado. That is their area. They put on shows in the entire area in that area. They have big shows they do every year annually, and it helps to have an anchor band. It helps to have, for example, all Michigan had for the longest time was ICP, but it was big enough that when they do shows, people come out and they go, "Man, I'd love to learn how to fucking do this. I'm gonna do this." And then from that, you got fucking, people like Twisted, people like Eminem, people like ABK, following the lead from Esham and shit. You have to have somebody who writes the blueprint, but everybody else just follows it after that, and it's really easy to read.
Yeah.
So my story, and I don't know if I've ever until this point gotten into how I got into the underground this in depth before. So, like I kind of alluded to, I saw ICP on WWF television. That was my first exposure to them. And then my mom every year would buy me the WWF magazine. It wasn't Raw at the time. It was just WWF magazine because there was two. And I only got WWF magazine in the mail. One day I got an issue that had ICP on the cover of it with there was a group at the time called the Oddities. And at first I'm kind of like, this is dumb. These are outsiders that I don't even, and again, I was ignorant to how deep they were at the time into wrestling. Obviously, if you go back in ICP's history, they've been into wrestling longer than they were into music. So now it makes sense, right? But at the time, it was like, who are these outsiders? I didn't care for them at all. One day, my mom had been staying the night at her boyfriend's house, and my sisters would always sneak over their friends when my mom would leave for the weekend, and one of them was a huge ICP fan. The very first rap song I ever heard was Super Balls off the Tunnel of Love. He had brought over the CD, and he had this, I'm going to really date myself here for a minute. He had a CD book, and he had just thrown it on the table, and I'd come across one that said Tunnel of Love. Yeah, the Bible, right. And it said Tunnel of Love on it. So I put it in. Who are these people infiltrating my wrestling scene? Super Balls, like I said, was the very first track that I ended up stopping to. I think it's track 3, if I sound maybe right. I don't know. But I listened to it, and I just thought it was hilarious. So it was actually the comedy that brought me in. I was heavily bullied.
What?
That's what got me, too, with What is a Juggalo? Same,
like the Wicked and the Dark shit grabbed me later on, the second, third time I listened to it, but that whimsical fucking comedy is what got me, man.
Same here.
Yeah,
Same
and
here.
that's what I was
Continue.
about to say. Once I kind of accepted what it was and understood what it was at the comedy level of it, um, I was heavily bullied as a kid. Heavily bullied. We were poor most of my life. My mom ended up getting a better job when I hit high school, but up until that point, we lived very poor. Some Christmases were only because other people's donations, that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to sob story, but
Mhm.
Troy, Ohio was a very rich population for the most part. So when ICP talked about killing Richies, that was my click moment because I was
Ooh.
bullied that was the point where I was like, this is who I am. And I've never realized that until very recently, that what spoke to me was them talking about, now you would call it social justice, but back then it was just be justice. The rich stepping on the necks of the poor, I dealt with that every day of my life. And I think a lot of people, especially in the Midwest, I don't know how it is in other states, I don't know, but in the Midwest, it's pretty much either you're rich or you're poor. The middle class is actually the underclass, at least it was at that time. There was very
Mhm.
few
Back
underclass
in the
people.
day, yeah.
And so that's
I can do you one better though. I can do you one better because I grew up in a southern town. The redneck part of it also caught me. And this is something I told people. Juggalos, you can say whatever you want about where we've gone to now, but at one point we were anti fucking hate groups. We were anti fucking white supremacists. We were anti fucking class breaking. We all the things that people are against now, we had y'all beat by like 10, 15 fucking years.
Yeah. Real shit.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct on that. And it's funny because when ICP started printing out the shirts that were like fuck Confederate flags or whatever,
Fuck
and
your rebel flag.
I do not get into politics on this show, so you have my word, we're not going down that route. We're just giving an example here. But when everyone would start tagging me in the shirts that they were reprinting that would say fuck your rebel flag, and they would be like, see, look, even ICP does it. I told everyone the exact same thing. We've been doing that.
You're
It's been
late.
that way for a long time. That you guys are just now getting on our bandwagon. But let's go ahead and shift on to another one. Jay Bizarre, you kind of brought this up. You touched on it, the fact that you live 15 minutes away from it. But again, the OGs remember Cave in Rock as being the Mecca, right? But you have to make a case now for Legend Valley
Well, it
because
is.
that's where they always go back to. You have to, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Bizarre. What's it? You say you live very close to it, so you're obviously there all the time. Can you kind of attest to that? Do you think Legend Valley is now the home of the gathering?
I think it's just like the owner Steve is like so welcoming to the Juggalos and the
Yeah.
event, and it's like they hold some major shit here, like major shows,
Lost
like
lands.
Lost Lands especially. That's the big one. That's the
Mm-hmm.
breadwinner there. Like I have Steve. I follow him on Facebook, and he's always periodically like found some Juggalo memorabilia, miss y'all family, shit like that. Like no, he's down. Like this
Good.
dude is a real one. He this place is amazing, man. Like for I never went to Cave and Rock, and from what it sounds like, it was fucking epic. And I wish I would have gone to know exactly what it was, but I can say that Legend Valley is the next thing to that. Like
Mhm.
for me, it is the best spot. Not just because it's close, that helps a lot, but but it's just dope. It's just I feel like it's what everybody enough for what we need. It'd be cool if we had, I guess, a pond. There's a pond there, but it's not like accessible.
Right.
but it's still dope as fuck. It would be cool to have a pond, but then again, you hear the stories about the pond.
There was a lake hepatitis. It's better without water.
That's what I'm saying. We don't want to pollute the local lands here, but it's a great. It has so much history. Like Legend Valley has so much fucking history.
Yeah, if you take one look into the showers the night of a gathering, it'll make you think twice about wanting a lake for
Hey,
sure.
so my very first gathering was 2006, and it was actually in Pataskala, Ohio. And
Patascala, the cow pasture.
what made me think of that is because you said the showers. Check this bullshit out. So my first gathering, 2006, right? I'm using the showers because I actually lived in Texas and I flew up here, and I got dropped off at a gas station that was real close by. Met some juggalos. They're like, "Come camp with us." I was like, "Fuck it." I ended up camping with them the whole gathering. Well, check this shit out. So the showers, I used them. I had a scratch from my shoe had like the plastic hanging off the back, like where the material rubs away, and it put a cut. While I was in those showers, I got a fucking staph infection. So
I was gonna.
a day and a half, 2 days. I had a cooler with ice and putting my foot. It was swollen up, but I stayed because I mean, what the fuck was I gonna do? You know what I mean? I had I could have lost my leg in 2006, but anyway, after that, the next
God, there
morning
are so
I
many
had my
stories
mom
like that.
because a lot of my family's here. I had my mom take me to the urgent care and got some antibiotics and shit for it, but like. It was worth it, but goddamn, dude, like, you know what I mean? But again, it was right here in Ohio.
Yep.
And I lived in Texas. I didn't move up here until 2012, basically. So that's why I didn't get to go to Cave and Rock. It wasn't easy for me to catch a plane and fly out of town like that. Like it just wasn't in the cards. And I worked all the time and I made my own music and shit. You know what I mean? And then I moved back up here. I'm like, well, fuck, it's right here. I'm making it every time. And I love it. I used to camp all the time, but I'm so close now. Well, we still camp. We set up like with the rejects or different people we know every year. Lately, we've been camping in Camp Reject, but like, yeah, man, like it's we will leave and come home and get a shower. I don't give a fuck. I, I don't like to be out there that many days sweating because it's always hot. It's always hot at the gathering, you know.
So okay, I want to end this as we wind down. I want to end this on something fun, okay? Because if you've been to a gathering, you have what I call a gathering story. And there's always one that pops in your head when you think about the gathering more than anything else. Now, I'm going to end on this. I'm going to give everybody just a second here to think about it. But when I say a gathering story, what I don't mean is, oh, yeah, I went to one. No, 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 no. There's always
I
one
got mine.
thing that where it's like, oh, God, what the hell did I just do? Or, oh, God, I can't believe that went down that way. Everyone's got one. So, Jew, I'm going to start with you. Bizarre, when he's done, I'm going to give it to you and then I'll end.
Okay, so the first gathering I ever went to was '04. It was my 20th birthday. My 20th fucking birthday, okay? After MC Breed and Bone Thugs performed, because they were the surprise guests for the first night, after they performed, Rudy came onto the stage and he said, the night's not done. We're going to drop the curtain and we're fucking partying back here. Come get in line and tell us why you're allowed to come back to this fucking club. Essentially, they turned the stage into a club, essentially. And I was third in line. The guy in front of me had a nice story. The guy in front of him had a story. He said he was a wrestler. I got up there and Rudy goes, "All right, Ninja, why do you get to come in?" I said, "It's my 20th fucking birthday." And his little handler looked at me. He goes, "Show me your ID." And Rudy fucking put his hand out. He goes, "That motherfucker ain't got to show me his ID." He handed me a beer. He put me inside. I went inside. I met Blaze. I met ABK. I smoked a blunt with ABK. That was fucking unbelievable. I met all the JCW wrestlers, including Necro Butcher. But the top of this, and this, I don't give a fuck if anyone says they don't believe me. I don't fucking care. It happened. After I cried on Alex Abyss's shoulder for telling him that their music saved my life, after that happened, Violent J he came in, he was asking everybody what they're doing here, what's going on. And I said, "It's my birthday." And Jay put me in a chair and him and a room full of juggalos sung me happy birthday. He tried to get me a lap dance, but I had a girlfriend at the time, so I turned it down because I was a fucking lame.
Oh yeah.
Jay, your turn, bro.
Well, so other than that negative shit about getting a staph infection at my first gathering, like 5 years ago, I went with my homeboy Jimmy to the gathering. Or we were hanging out, and we stumbled upon a huge, I don't know, it was 2 trash bags full of fireworks that were right by a tent, and somebody was like, who was letting them off. This guy was like, "Hey, help us light them off, man. Here, grab. They're all right here. Get them. Go ahead." And we're just sitting there right by one of the fucking the side stages, like right fucking there. And we got 2, I'm talking trash bags full of fucking fireworks, mortars, and all this crazy shit, right? And I'm just thinking, dude, fuck yeah, drunk as fuck, kicking it. And I'm just blowing them off. And we're sitting there probably 45 minutes blowing them off. And a cart pulls up security and they're like, y'all got to quit doing that. Stop, the fireworks, cut it out. And we're like, shit. And so we're like, well, fuck, what do we do with these fireworks? I'm like, I don't want them to take them, And my dude was like, well, fuck, all right, fuck it. So we dragged them and took them off to our site. And we started launching them off our site. And so we're blowing them off like all fucking night, just shooting them off. And man, my dude puts one in upside down, I never experienced fucking with mortars. I grew up off of fucking bottle rockets, M80s, if you want to call them that, MC, whatever the fuck they called them, M20s or some shit. The little weak ones, they got weak after a while. But I'm over here getting the blow off mortars, and my dude, we're back, and this fucking base just boom blows the fuck up, and people are walking by. I felt bad, like people were like, "Oh shit," it was so fucking loud, obviously, and that happened. But in that course of events, my dude who was really fucking lit. All right, my dude now, I didn't know him. He was and he was so fucked up, and I was like, well, shit, this is the gathering, man. You need help, and him and his girl and me, and there might have been someone else there, and we were carrying him back to his site. And from that fucking day, man, motherfuckers have been so supportive. The whole crew, the whole family, and all of them were good homies now. And I made all these friends because of that gathering. Yeah. We were blowing off fucking fireworks. So fucking dope. And to that,
okay.
Fuck. You know what I mean?
Faux show. Okay, so I've got a story I've never told. It's never left my lips until this moment right here, unless you were involved in the situation. Okay? So this is the first time I'm going to say this publicly. I figured, fuck it. If I'm going to ever tell this story, why not on my own show? It is a bit embarrassing, but turns out okay. I'll explain here in a moment. So, the year I started promoting, like I said, everything moved very, very fast for me. I didn't really get time to take it in because I started in April. And like I said, by this time, it would have been July. By July, I'm rubbing elbows with people I grew up listening to, and I had never met these people before. I had never gone to VIP meet. I've been to ICP meet and greet, so obviously I met them, but they weren't going to Dayton, Ohio. It was everybody else. So I am fully immersed into what the wrestling world would call markism. Every little detail is amazing to me. I'm hanging out with DJ Clay when he was doing his drip stuff. I'm helping him, he's hanging out with me on a weekend and stuff, right? So I'm fully immersed. Never been to a gathering before at that point. Till that year, people had convinced me to go. So I'm like, okay, it's in Columbus, obviously, and so I go sneak in. Well, let me back up a little bit here. That night, I'm a big Finger 11 fan, huge Finger 11 fan, and Odd Bodies was hosting Finger 11 on day 2 of the gathering. So we decided we were going to go to the Finger 11 concert at Odd Bodies, then immediately from there, go to the gathering and sneak in, right? So I get fucking annihilated at the Finger 11 show because at this time, I'm very cool with the owners of Odd Bodies. They're just they know I'm going to the gathering. It's a big deal for me. They're just giving me drinks, right? So we ended up staying a little bit later than I wanted to and actually partying with Finger 11 after the show. So we leave around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, make the drive to Legend Valley. Pull up, we meet the person that's going to sneak us in. At this point in time, oh God, I hope nobody's watching the security there. At this point in time, we just had, obviously they still have, let's see if I can find it up here somewhere. Okay, so this isn't the same one, but these are the kind of cloth wristbands that you get when you're at the gathering, right? This year it was the Bang Pow Boom era, I think it was. And no, that wouldn't have been right. It was the one after that. Lost and Found, that's what it was. So it was a purple and yellow wristband. So people were just getting purple and yellow material, drawing big purple circles on it and turning it inside out. So when you would walk through the gate, you would just show them the wristband. And if you're doing it in the dark, they would just kind of do a flashlight on you and check to make sure it was good, right? So it was me and my wife, one of my wife's friends, and the guy that we were meeting was actually kind of lightweight talking to her. So he gives us all wristbands. We go through the main gate. My wife, who didn't know two shits, she's fully immersed now, but at the time she didn't know two shits about the underground. Same thing with her friend. They both walk past the guard at the gate, right? Show him the wristband. He shines the light on him, whatever. He looks at mine and immediately goes, "Oh, whoa, 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 whoa." I'm like, these two normies get in, no big deal, but the person that actually looks like he's supposed to be here gets stopped, right? So he stops me, and I'm fucking panicked at this time, thinking I'm going to get turned around. He gets real close to the wristband, and he goes, it's just turned inside out. Go on in. I'm like, oh, thank God. So at this point, I'm like, yes, I'm fully immersed. I'm doing I'm doing like the Mark whoop whoops and everything. Like this is my first gathering, right? And I just successfully snuck in. I ended up meeting up with DJ Clay. He was on stage 2. Mad Child was performing, and DJ Clay gets me behind the barricade. And he's like, "Hey, come over here." And he's with the dude named Fisticuffs at the time, and we just start kicking it or whatever. And I'm watching Mad Child on the side of the stage. Eventually, Clay, said he's got to go take care of some things. I was like, "All right, cool. I'm gonna stay here if that's all right with you." He's like, "Yeah, stay." I'm like, "All right, cool." Mad Child gets off, and let me back up. Before Mad Child gets off stage, ABK had just came up to the side of the stage. And again, I just did a show with him back in April, and it was a very successful show. He remembered who I was. It was all great. We were chopping it up. Everything was cool, right? So Mad Child gets off stage. I take a picture with Mad Child. I'm about even more drunk at this time from when I was at the Finger 11 show. And Mad Child takes off. Me and ABK are just kicking it. I just keep drinking and drinking and drinking. And I end up telling him, oh, God. I end up telling him, man, I really want to get a Native World tattoo. And my wife, who's a little smart ass, goes, "You should get a tramp stamp." And ABK goes, "Shit, I'll pay for a Native World tramp stamp right now." And I was like, "Bro, you pay for a Native World tramp stamp, bro. We'll do it. Let's go find a tattoo artist. I'll do it. It's the gathering. Fuck it." And he looks at me and goes, "So if I buy this, you won't get a Native World tramp stamp." I said, "Yes, you buy the tattoo, and I am excited as a motherfucker. I'm going to go get, ABK is going to pay for me to get a Native World tramp stamp." I go back to the site that I'm camping with, and I, again, super excited, telling them, ABK said he's going to pay for me to get a Native World tramp stamp. And they're not, the excitement I'm showing them, they're not reciprocating. They're not at all. They're just, luckily, the inner I gotta help my homie kicked in, and they're all like, "Dude, you just need to go to the trailer. You need to just not do this. Go to bed, rethink this in the morning." So I do. Wake up, terrible hangover. Like you said, Jay, heat was ungodly. I've got a terrible hangover, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm not fucking going." So I made up my mind that ain't happening. Thank God ABK didn't go, "Shit, let's go right now." Otherwise, right now, I would have a Native World tramp stamp on my back. I would be telling you about right now. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. Yeah, everybody can check me in public if they want. Ain't no tattoo behind my ass crack to this day. But if he would have said it right then and there, I would have had a Native World tramp stamp. And it's funny because my whole camp was going, we agreed we were going to meet up at the tattoo artist booth at 4:00. I don't know if he ever went because I wasn't bringing my ass around. But everybody, literally, I wasn't bringing my ass around.
I don't remember any of that shit.
Yeah, right.
That's funny.
But my camp kept going, "It's 2:00. You gotta go meet him." But anyway, so that's my story. I'm gonna go ahead and end it here. We're getting on about an hour. I want to thank both you guys for joining me today. Man, this was a great conversation. I had a really good time. Thank you guys for jumping on here. Jay Bizarre, we're going to go ahead and start with you. Then if Fatz will end with you, go ahead. I always give the last couple of minutes for everybody to say what they want to say from their end. Jay, like I said, let's go ahead and start with you. But anything you want to say, man, the floor is yours.
Yeah, shout out to all my homeboys that I'm working with. Shout out DJ Dabaron, Lil Nate. Shout out to the Rejects, Tritone Music, Grant Gatsby, and much love. Appreciate all the viewers. Stay Dennett.
Man, it's easy to find me. It's Fatz King on pretty much every fucking thing. If you want to see the retarded shit I put up there, just memes, wrestling, whatever. But if you want to find out where I'm really at, come see me in the pit. That's where you'll really get to know who I am. It's, I put pretty much all of my work into the LLE Street Team right now, and it's fucking long live evil till the end. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, fellas. I appreciate y'all joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, much love. Y'all have a good one.